Okay, so now we are going to talk about death. As cheery as it is, I know you guys want to talk about it so much. This is a big topic in philosophy, so we are going to talk a little bit about some of the arguments and objections and why you cannot deny these premises. So the first argument is the Epicurean argument, and premise one states that you cease to exist at death, which most of us can probably agree with. Number two states that if so, then you experience nothing of disvalue after death. Number three, if you experience nothing of disvalue after death, then death is not bad for you. Number four, you should fear only what is bad for you. And number five, therefore you should not fear death. So back to number one, says you cease to exist at death, which many people would probably endorse unless you believe in an afterlife. So if you believe in heaven, or if you believe that you go somewhere, your spirit goes somewhere, some entity that is you goes somewhere after death, then you could deny premise one of the Epicurean argument.
And just to clarify before I go into the modified argument, we're not talking about fearing the process of death, because naturally fearing death, the process, is a rational thing to fear. We're just talking about death in general, if people were confused. All right, I'm doing the modified Epicurean argument. This argument will include afterlife into the argument. So let's see if you like this one better. Premise one, you can either cease to exist at death or continue to exist in the pleasant afterlife. Premise two, if so, then you experience nothing of disvalue after death. Premise three, if you experience nothing of disvalue after death, then death is not bad for you. Premise four, you should fear only what is bad for you. And then five, therefore you should not fear death.
Okay, now after reading and hearing this argument, I would like to deny premise one, because I believe that there is definitely a possibility of an unpleasant afterlife, or the idea that we talked about Hitler in class, and he obviously had really negative impacts on the world. He had negative influences on the world, and he did really horrible things. And he kind of lives on through his influences in the world today. So that could be a way that people would say you have an unpleasant afterlife. And also, some people would say that his influences carry on into his afterlife because he is still existing and he is still a being. So therefore, the negative influences that he had on the world would carry on into his afterlife and create an unpleasant afterlife for himself.
An unpleasant afterlife is a rational thing to fear, because no one wants to burn in hell. But but if you listen closely to the argument, the word you is used a lot. This argument is directed towards you personally as the reader. So most people won't feel like they are going to have an unpleasant afterlife. And so therefore, worrying about an unpleasant afterlife is irrelevant, because you're not going to think yourself, or like for me, oh dear God, I'm gonna go somewhere bad. That's not what I think. I definitely want to put myself somewhere good. So in this case, you don't have to worry about that.
Okay, so I guess it's important to note that it's not about other people's afterlife. It's about you and solely you. So in this argument, you would have to think specifically what you're going to think about your afterlife, and if that's a pleasant place to be, then you can't deny premise one of this argument. But I have more. I would also like to deny premise three, which states that if you experience nothing of disvalue after death, then death is not bad for you. But people would like to say that things can be bad for you even if you experience nothing of disvalue. So, for example, I talked about how marriage can be bad for you even though it doesn't bring you anything of disvalue. I think what I was going for here is that, oh no, that's premise four. Back up.
We'll get there.
It's fine.
We'll get there.
We're coming to that.
Mm-hmm.
But premise three, is that death can be bad for you even if it brings nothing of disvalue in the afterlife, because you lose out on experiences you would have had you not died. You miss out. Like say you die young, you miss out on the opportunity to go to college. You miss out on the opportunity to have a family. You miss out on the opportunity to get married. These are all things that you still lose, although they're not as values to you in the afterlife. It's things, the opportunities that you miss out on that you could have had you not died. So therefore, death is still in a way bad for you.
Makes sense. However, this argument also thought of people denying this premise as well. You do not exist anymore after death, is the argument. And so once you're in a pleasant afterlife, you're not experiencing the loss that you say you are. Because the fear of these things, the fear of having lost experiences, isn't the fear of death itself, and that's what the argument is trying to convey. And also, the people that will be affected or from those experiences or losses as the people that are still alive. So this does not affect you. Yeah, it does not affect you, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the argument. So,
all right, moving on to the one I wanted to talk about. Obviously,
she was
before,
foreshadowing.
I was just getting you guys excited. Okay, so premise number 4 is you should fear only what is bad for you, which is what I was talking about previously. I believe that I can deny this because I still think that you can fear good things. And this is what I was talking about with marriage and children. I think that it would probably be a common thing to say that you're nervous or scared to get married. You're nervous to have children. These are all things that you are scared of, although they could be the greatest things to ever happen to you and the best things in your life. You can still fear them, although they're not bad for you at the end of the day.
Yes. Well, my response to this question I do have a response to this. If you fear good things, it is not the I'm trying to figure out how to word this argument. Because, I mean, obviously it's rational to fear change. And marriage and having children is change. But change isn't necessarily bad, and arguing this could mean that change is a bad thing in all cases, and change is not a bad thing in all cases. So therefore, and especially if these changes will result in good things. Therefore, it's irrational to fear the good things. But I also see the other side of the argument, because it's also natural to fear those things.
I feel like someone could say that you should only fear what is bad for you, and so if marriage and children end up being a good thing in your life and end up being like one of the best things in your life, then they could call that an irrational fear because of the outcome that it brought. I just think that denying 4 is probably your best bet in this argument, because it's harder to find a response to, as you can see.
It's a struggle.
But I definitely think that there are some out there, so if you want to comment or let us know your opinion, these are all just our personal opinions and what we've learned and things we've thought of, so if you can come up with something and challenge any of these, then feel free to. And that is all we're going to talk about death today.
Yeah.
And hopefully the rest of your day is a little more cheery.
Yes.
And you talk about happy things.
And just please remember that we're not arguing that the, that word that I'm looking for, the act of dying, or that should work. Yeah, the act of dying isn't what we're arguing. So if you comment, it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to be afraid of obviously going through the pain of dying. That's not the argument. So just keep that in mind in your comments.
Thank you for
Thank
watching.
you so much. Yep.